pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3, review for approval of minutes, executive session memorandum of June 18th, 2020. Get a motion to approve.
Motion.
Dr. Gerges makes the motion in a second. Mr. Garrison seconds the motion. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Thank you. Item D, persons to address the board relative to the agenda. First up, Olivia Leach.
Hello.
Hello. If you would just say your name once again and your address and what agenda item you're going to comment.
Olivia Leach, 910 Mathis Avenue, Olathe, Indiana. And I was hoping to just say something quick about putting turf on the football field. And how it would just, safer. And I think too, a big thing would be maintenance, especially afterwards. Be a lot less money spent, especially because I know like now, you have painting and you have big just dips and stuff, and especially with marching band, because that's what I was mostly involved in, was marching band. And marching and having dips in the ground is not the funnest thing to experience, especially if you like lose a shoe, which has happened. Yes, where you can't see anything. And I know a lot of schools around us have turf already, which is nice to experience going to different competitions. And I think it would be a very good idea to put turf on the field and have a moral support.
Are most
Used to being in front of crowds. I've seen you up there on that stand directing that band.
Not talk.
are most of the competitions all on the synthetic turf fields now?
Majority, yeah, majority.
That's. I mean, I've attended some, but I obviously do not
Yeah.
attend a lot of them, and that's just what I've been told. That
Mhm.
that's how those decisions are typically made.
Yeah, majority are definitely, there may be one, two that maybe not, but most every competition.
Thank you, Ms. Leach.
Thank you very much. And your moral support for. Next up is Eric Berger.
Eric Berger, 17 Woodlawn Village in Mitchell. I teach out at the high school and middle schools as well. I just wanted to address H2, the project for the bond. And thank you again for taking some time to discuss that tonight, especially the improvements that are going to happen out at the high school for the kids out there. One thing I've learned over the years of teaching kids how to be successful and be competitive is one, they've got to have pride in where they're at and what they're doing. And that pride leads to confidence, and then that confidence leads to success. And I think this bond project and those facility enhancements are going to help a lot of kids develop that bigger sense of pride in their facilities and where they're spending all their time. As far as the marching band goes, when we rehearse, we do a lot of repetition of the same exact move time after time after time. And having a chance to practice part of the week on that athletic field on the AstroTurf or the artificial turf will help alleviate some of the problems we have with joints and aches and pains of doing the same thing again and again and again. Just that one evening or a little time on that turf will help the kids a lot. But thanks again for discussing this tonight, and I appreciate everything you're doing for us.
Thank you. Next up, Brad Gilbert.
Hello, I'm Brad Gilbert, 218 Cedar View Lane. I'm the head softball coach. This would have been my 20th year had we got to have a season this year. I'm still counting it because we did a lot of prep over that. We actually had 3 practices, so I guess we can't count it as my 20th year. Third year, assistant athletic director, and just finished my 30th year as the machine trades instructor for our school system. I wanted to talk just real quick. I wanted to thank you for getting us to this point as far as talking about turf. You know, I think it's been a long time coming, and I'm just thankful that we're here and we're actually just, you know, at least talking about it right now. I could talk all night about the advantages that it's going to be for our softball program, but I'm not going to do that. And I think the girls kind of hit the nail on the head also about the advantages of turf for our maintenance department, all the costs we have for chemicals, mowing, and you know, all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes, a lot of money goes into the grass. And I think there's been a lot of times that people have complained about maybe not being able to use our facilities more, but a lot of times it's been because of us worried about overuse. I know on our softball field, we used to have a middle school softball team. It was self-funded, and what I mean by that was it was board approved, but the school system, it really wasn't a school team, I guess, as far as we didn't have transportation, things like that. We had that team for about 7 years. They used our high school field. There were a couple of reasons why we had to stop that, but one of the biggest reasons was the wear and tear on our field. You know, we host Sim State. We have a really nice field, and so we get a chance to host Sim State. And we were just with all the extra practices and stuff, it was just too much, you know, wear and tear. So turf would help that. But really, I think the benefit to turf for all of our facilities would be our PE departments. We'll be able to use those all day long, and I think those are, you know, would be good things to get those kids outside more. They can't use some of the fields in the morning because of the grass. You know, it's just too wet, or you know, with the dew, maybe a rain that night or whatever. And so with turf, I think our PE classes will be able to use it. Extracurricular classes will be able to use it. I know, like FFA and Key Club and clubs like that want to have an outdoor activity would be able to schedule time, at least on the softball field during the fall, you know, when we're not having practices, you know, and things like that. So I think those would be benefits. I know we would like to let boys club and girls club come and use the softball field a lot for practices and things like that. And if we had turf, then there would be no reason why they couldn't practice after our high school team got done. We could host tournaments on the weekends and things like that. So those are just some of the you know, benefits. And I think honestly, all the benefits are far above and beyond what the cost is going to be. I mean, I think it's been proven that it's going to be beneficial for us to turf most of the facilities out there. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next up, Derek Barker.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Derek Barker, 219 Hiltonville Road East here in Bedford. Talking on the same issue. Assistant football coach at the high school. This will be my 6th year, going into 2nd year as defensive coordinator. So yeah, just kind of want to talk about some of the stuff that you really can't put a number on. I know we can sit here and we can talk about pricing of the field and how, you know, maybe we spend a little more money up front, but you know, a lot of research shows it pays for itself within 4 or 5 years. But what I really want to talk about, and I know it was mentioned earlier, is just kind of the sense of pride for the players, the parents, and really for the community. So one of the big advantages that I see of having these types of facilities is a community hub for sports, whether it be football, marching band, you know, cheer, softball, baseball, anything like that. Whatever we can do to get the community to kind of have that central facility of pride and use, like you said, you know, whether it's middle school, youth leagues, whatever it might be. This allows us to do that instead of kind of being spread out around town. As well as that, you know, like I said, from the player standpoint, I think we have a couple of football players here tonight. So, I mean, that just shows how important it is to them, that aspect of having something that you can help take care of, that you can maintain, that you can keep at a pristine level, and taking pride in that as well as competing in it. As far as benefits for the football team, so as the defensive coordinator, one of the things that's difficult is practicing on a field that's not full size and it doesn't have the full markings of a football field. A lot of times, I'm telling kids their assignment is to get to a number on the field or a hash mark or something. And it's tough to maintain a grass practice field with all that on it. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of painting. So having this kind of artificial turf surface that we can practice on would make that a lot simpler, as well as just the lack of kind of injury concerns as far as, if the ground might be different one day from the next, whether it be rain, field conditions, something like that. And then there's no need for rest between uses. And that, again, this kind of touches back on my first point about the community hub. I mean, we could play a varsity game on it Friday night. Saturday morning, we could turn around and have, middle school youth league games, something like that. The marching band could have a competition on it. There's no need for that rest in between uses where you get with a full field surface that you can wear out. And again, this is something that we can use year round. Obviously, temperature permitting, there's some hindrances with lightning and stuff like that. But I just see it as a big advantage for our community, our kids. I think it's awesome that we're having this conversation. Really, really excited with where it's going. So appreciate your time. That's all I have.
I had a question.
Yeah.
And I know, and I don't know the answer to this. I know we have 2 practice fields that I
Sure.
assume that football uses.
Yes, that's
I
correct.
know one of the fields I saw, it had a sprinkler system, because when I was out in high school the other day, the sprinkler system was running.
Yep.
So my guess is, we take pretty good care of those practice fields right now because of all of the use they get.
Sure.
In I'm assuming we kind of do offense and a defense.
Exactly.
Would we still need to maintain those 2 practice fields, or, would probably a majority of the practice just actually be on our game field?
I would see the majority of the practices for us being on the game field. I would still think the need to maintain maybe one of them would be needed, just so we're not taking up all the time on it, just so we can still offer some time to the band, maybe to other activities that need it. But yeah, I wouldn't see probably quite the need to maintain 2 grass fields. Like I said, we do rotate offense and defense back and forth on those. Whereas with a full, artificial turf field, it could all be done there. We wouldn't have to worry about overusing it or damaging it, that type of thing.
I didn't realize is just the one field irrigated practice field, or both of them?
No,
Or does anybody know? Do you know?
I think it's just the bottom.
Just the one. Okay.
Yeah.
Out by the game.
Yeah, that's what
I saw it the other day, and I didn't realize that we irrigated that. They don't work well. Did that?
It's hit and
Okay.
miss.
Well, we attempt to do a good job.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
That's all the cards I had right now. Okay. Thank you. Item E, business services, Mr. Jerome.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a payroll and we got a couple claims through since our last board meeting. We had a total of $3,469,569.76 in claims and payroll. I'm seeking your approval.
Get a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve.
Mr. Gilbert makes the motion in a second. Dr. Durgan seconds the motion. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item F, curriculum, Mrs. Dayton.
Good evening. First, I wanted to start with a presentation. We talked about the preschool program before. We have a website up now for Playful Pathways is our preschool, and that is our logo, as it represents the pathways in the brain and the connections that our students are going to make at preschool with that STEM learning and also that play and integration of learning through play. Ready? Next slide. Yeah, I know. So the Playful Pathways Preschool will be located at the North Lawrence Learning Center at the Stalker Building, former Stalker Building. Our coordinator is Shelley Pritchett. The phone number there is available for parents, and the enrollment request form is now open and has been open. And we have over 30 families that have filled out the request form. And so actually our teachers are moving in right now. They have been moving in as soon as they could. And so we're excited to also do a virtual tour of the building once the teachers are moved in, and so parents can see what the space looks like. More information. The hours of the program will be 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it will be, we'll have school year options and year round available. It will be $30 a day, and we are only doing full-time enrollment to begin, and that includes meals. And that is from 6:30 to 6 p.m. So that $30, they can come from 7 to 3, or they can come some days if they need 7 to 3, or if a parent works late on Fridays and they need to stay till 6. That fee gives them the option to be at in the program for that entire time. And then also our preschool that supports our students with IEPs that have developmental delays will also be housed at Stalker, and there is no cost. That is a program that is provided and has been provided at Parkview Primary, and those teachers will also be moving over, so there will be just one preschool setting for our students. And then the next is a preview of what our new website looks like for the Playful Pathways, and we look forward to many more enrollments and getting going and enrolling those little ones. So I wanted to share that. And then also I have Mr. Schlegel here. Oh, yes, yes, you can.
On
Sorry.
What would be the limit on the enrollment there? What would it be the cap?
Well, we'll do 20 students per classroom for the community program.
And we could have,
Right
how
now,
many rooms?
Three
Is it a
rooms.
hu- We have 3, but we could
we can
probably,
expand more, but we're
we
ready.
could go 4 more.
Yeah.
So we could have about 140.
But they have to pay on the days they go, that $30 a day, like if they're only gonna come Monday through Thursday,
Yeah.
they have to pay the full week.
So we're doing just full-time enrollment, so they would pay the full week. But if it was Memorial Day or Labor Day, we wouldn't charge for those days. But yeah, right now. And then we will, like I said, we will offer school enrollment and then year-round. And so if we'll do a survey probably in September for fall break, and if you're interested or need that childcare over fall break, then you could choose to pay that week income, and we would staff accordingly. And then if not, and you want to keep your kids home that week, and you wouldn't pay for that week. Any other questions? Okay, well now I'll invite Mr. Schlegel up to share about our Empire Virtual Learning Academy. Our content, so I'll let you share.
Good evening, happy to be here. Short notice on the presentation, so bear with me. Your thanks for patience is already extended. But we're excited about the opportunities. We began talking about an online program before COVID. So it's obviously very timely where we're at now with the COVID pandemic and the increased need and desire, we think, that a lot of our families are going to have a different type of experience. Initially, we wanted to provide an alternative, meet students where they are, because there's obviously a need. And obviously, we lose a lot of students to different online experiences every year. I don't have the exact number to that, but I know we lose a lot of students to homeschool. Most of those homeschoolers are involved in some sort of online experience. So we can keep those students here is a big reason why we want to do this. So just a few bullet points here, Andrew, if you'd advance. Okay. I'll go ahead. I've got it here. There, the first one. We expect that based on the experience that students recently had with at-home learning, that many of those families realize that a virtual experience is something they may not have thought about before, but perhaps they liked it and maybe now they want it. But at-home learning was and is very different than an online school and what that's going to look like. So right away, we're going to make that very clear that there's a lot of differences there. And one of the main differences is that an online experience, a virtual school, is going to be much more individualized. Obviously, it's going to be much more rigorous as well. At-home learning was not designed to replicate or be a substitute for what a student typically experiences in a school. An online school will do that. So it's going to be real important that folks understand that going in, that it's going to be different than what they had the last quarter of this past year. We're going to serve students K through 12. The contract that was approved recently with Edmentum is for 7 through 12. Different contingencies are in place if the desire exists for our younger students, our elementary students. A lot to be fleshed out there. Maggie and I have talked about that, maybe through Edmentum, it may be through in-house personnel. A lot of that depends on enrollment demand. There's still a lot of pieces associated with the online school that are not nailed down. That's the way it is with all things education right now. It's kind of a fluid situation. But I will say the most critical component to what we want to do with online instruction is firmly in place. My initial concern all along was, are we going to be able to provide meaningful instruction and provide academic support as our students need? If we were to staff this internally, I'm not sure what that would look like. But now going with Edmentum, that is firmly in place. That's the most critical component of the school, of this program. That's in place. I feel great about that. We'll build around that, but the support, the academic support is in place. What we're getting with Edmentum are instructors in all content areas that do this for a living. They are online instructors trained for that. So students are going to have the opportunity to interact with teachers on a regular basis. There's going to be contact, virtual contact with them. There'll be instruction live and recorded opportunities. So it's a robust program that I'm glad we're part of. So that's an important component. But there's still going to be an NLCS component to go with Edmentum. It's not just a situation where students are going to be turned over to these folks scattered all over the country. We're still going to be heavily involved. Our facility across the way, Stalker, to be renamed, I believe, is going to provide a lot of resources, great resources for families that may want to come in to use lab space. There'll be some testing that goes on there. We will have the opportunity to provide tutoring there as well. So a lot of different opportunities that we can provide that a lot of virtual schools cannot. So we hope and anticipate that that will resonate with some of our parents. They'll like that. They're not just going to be staring at a screen constantly. There is going to be that human connection and human touch with Empire. So we're excited about that. Student progress will be monitored by staff. The entire staff will be focused on that. That's me. And so we'll be working with families to make sure we're on pace. There's pacing guide through Edmentum. Students can accelerate. They can go faster than that, but we'll be monitoring mainly if they're falling behind and at risk of missing the target completion dates. And just making sure that they're feeling comfortable about things. Again, that human connection where they can connect with someone if they're having technical issues or anything else. So that'll be firmly in place. And the informational meetings available morning and evening will be flexible. We understand this isn't just an 8 to 3 kind of deal. It's 24/7 really. So we'll be flexible in meeting the needs of families in that regard as well. So a lot of exciting things going on with Empire, a lot yet to be determined, and most of what's still up in the air hinges on enrollment. We're going to roll out a form connected to the NLCS website very soon, maybe already. Okay, so we'll be soliciting input from families that are interested and start to get a feel for the number of students we're potentially looking at. That then will impact some of the other things that we're going to do with that. So that's the biggest question now. But again, I want to just emphasize again, the key component is firmly in place, and that's the academic support and instruction. So I feel good about that. That's a look at the form we're going to make available to families to complete. A lot of just demographic information, what their feelings are, why they're interested in an online experience, and some different reasons for that. So that's kind of where we're at now in a brief nutshell. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have. Yes.
Mr. Slagle, so if they enroll in this program, they're gonna also be allowed to enroll in extracurricular activities that are part of the school system?
That, yes. I mean, it's not currently the way it is, so I'm a little hesitant to say yes, because that doesn't go with our policy. But that is one of the policies that Mr. Callahan is looking at, because historically we didn't, but
They weren't enrolled in.
but they weren't enrolled in our program. So that would be something, yes. I think with band or choir, those types of activities.
And how about sports?
In sports, yes. Extracurricular activities.
That would be a distinction between just being a straight homeschool where you're creating your own curriculum and maybe enrolling in another program versus potentially enrolling in our program.
Right, yeah. Well, another factor with that is the enrollment numbers. Again, so much is connected with the enrollment numbers. If we're below a certain threshold, the Empire Virtual Academy will not be its own entity, but under the umbrella of BNL. If that's the case, then obviously extracurricular participation is simple. Yes.
So how does this impact like graduation rates and things like that? Is that counted in North Orange Community Schools? And as far as like class rankings, are they ranked with the same students out of BNL or whatever school, or is that something completely separate?
Well, again, it depends on the numbers. I say a lot, if the school is under the umbrella of BNL, it's BNL graduation rates. If it's its own entity, then those are its own graduation rates. Obviously, all still within the district, so it'll impact in that way. But it's to be determined yet whether it will be its own entity, its own school, or kind of part of BNL.
And that contingent on there's a state that if you have a state law or state mandate that if you have over 100 students in a virtual academy, then you have to assign it its own school number. So that is what we're waiting to see what the enrollment is. And it is interesting because we know some families will enroll just for this year because of the pandemic, and some families, this is what they've been looking for is an online. So there's not been any change in that as far as saying, you know, we may have 150 enrolled this year, but next year, assuming all is back to normal, that only 50 want to stay in, we would still have to create that number as it stands right now, still have to create that number this year, even though the enrollment would be lower next year.
But I think your question, you know, Rusty, is one that I hadn't thought about that. And I think we're going to have to think about those classes and how they're weighted and with our valedictorian and salutatorian. And we're probably going to have to explore what some of these other schools have done. But we'll need to. I hadn't thought about that, but I know that I started spinning when you asked that question, and that's something that we need to address because we need to look at that.
And that's, we had a conversation yesterday with Mrs. Clark at the high school, just talking about, you know, and career or pathways, graduation pathways, and what that will look like to get to different buckets. And again, it will also depend on if the student is planning on staying for multiple years within a virtual school, or if they're really just doing it for this year because of the situation too. So yeah, there is communication with BNL and all that.
I assume that with this being K through 12, that, you know, obviously the high school students would be with BNL. How would the middle school, would they be aligned with either one of the middle schools or?
So if there's less than 100 kids, then they would be enrolled at the school that they would be districted to. If there's more, and it would be more than 100 K-12, so it's not just more than 100 at BNL, it would be more than 100 students within North Lawrence, then we would have to become, and it would just be a K-12 online school, just be one school.
I may have missed it, but how far of a reach does this have as far as, is it just within NLCS district, or is it Mitchell, Orleans, South Central Indiana? I mean, how far can we?
Well, we could accept students from anywhere in the state of Indiana.
Okay. And I assume we will maybe advertise outside of our community too.
And I think mailers, homeschools, I think anyway, is once we get it going and learn a little bit more, obviously, you know, and I think we wanted a name too that, you know, that obviously was a neutral enough name that didn't necessarily tie it, but yes, that's our goal.
One other thing with that too, we want to reach out to a lot of the students and families that have recently withdrawn to homeschool. I asked for a report looking at the last 2 years of students that have withdrawn in grades 6 through 12, just to homeschool, not to transfer. And it was an extensive list, a lot of students. Within that, while we aren't specific enough to know who's participating in an online experience, you can reasonably assume that a lot are. Now we can say, hey, we've got that right here, and with some more benefits that you may not have access to if you're doing something out of another state or something like that. So that's another population we're going to target.
Now, if they enroll in the virtual academy, so there's no cost really, correct?
That's correct.
It's state funded, but if these kids in their home schools and they decide to enroll in an online academy of another sort, typically there's a cost to that. I'm not sure, I don't know.
No, if
Whatever they enroll in,
yeah,
it's covered by state funding of some sort.
that's right. Yeah. State funding follows the student.
Gotcha.
I think one key is that personal touch piece that we will have that a lot of those just big K-12 all online don't have. And I think that is a big factor and something that we really wanted to have here.
Will we provide things like counseling for these kids or other options like that they no longer could get in the school system?
We've explored some of that and talked about it. And again, it depends on the enrollment, what the size is, what will justify an allocation. I could definitely see a need for a counselor early on. That's usually one of the first additional hires of an online school for a variety of reasons, counseling services, and just for helping students navigate the courses and making sure credits are aligned and all that. So we have the opportunity to provide a lot of services. We've even talked about maybe some sort of health service too out of that building. So that's another way that we can really expand on that human touch, that being local, that a lot of the online schools can't.
Well, one other question, we've got a couple of music people here. Would they be allowed, obviously, you know, extracurricular, they could enroll in any of those, but would they be able to participate like music and dance and things like that and do some classes at the high school, or would that be strictly, or is that something you haven't discussed?
Well, we started, and again, it depends on whether it's just the number, because right now with the way they would be enrolled in P&L, so that, you know, they are part of that high school. If that number and they're a different school, then we'd have to see, because we don't know how they could be enrolled in two schools to have classes. They could be enrolled in the Career Center also and this other school, but you can't be enrolled in two schools at the same time. Like, you couldn't be enrolled at, just like physically, you could be enrolled in Mitchell and P&L.
I didn't know how that would work.
Yeah, so that's
some other activities that would, you know, because it's pretty hard to do like drama online.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there's a lot of online drama.
But that is one of the things we were just talking about exploring. So that, I mean, there are still some of those to be worked out. But and one thing I also wanted to clarify is that students that choose to be, and we'll kind of see this in our reopening plan a little bit later, but students that choose to be in person, they want to be in person, but need to be excluded for 10 days because of exposure to COVID or things like that, they would not enroll in this online academy. They would be provided support to continue with the classes they are enrolled in at their building, because they would then go back to the building following the exclusion. So we wanted to make that different. This is separate. We would keep them work with our support staff, our teachers, and to keep them on pace to return when they were done being excluded because of exposure.
We expect there to be some movement between traditional brick and mortar schools and the online academy, but we don't want to create a revolving door type of situation with just constant movement. We're going to put in place some logical breaks and maybe an end of a trimester, end of a semester, and that's where changes can take place. Because we understand that someone may start at the academy, not be for them, want to go back and so forth, or someone may want to do the reverse. So we want to be mindful of that, but we just can't have that constant movement. Well, thanks for your support on this. I think we're going to be able to meet a great need in our community, and it's certainly very timely.
Thank you.
For your work.
Thank you.
Yes. Both of these programs, it's really exciting to get to see it. And I think we'll have one of our meetings where I want us to go down and tour the facility and how we, everything that we're going to be doing in Stalker and creating that learning center. And, we've even got some other classes there from the Career Center and different ones. And so it's exciting.
It's about time. We've been pushing for this how long, Trustee?
The last item I have is just the approval of an MOU between NLCS North Lawrence and the United Way. Mrs. Burgess came and presented the donation at a previous board meeting, but we didn't have the MOU, and this is just the $50,000 this year for the preschool program and $25,000 in subsequent years. So I just need your approval on that item.
What does MOU stand for?
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm not in business like that. Acronyms.
Memorandum, just that we're gonna spend that money on the preschool, and that will be line item to just fund for that.
LOL, President. Sorry, Mr. President. Sure.
Doctor, could I get a motion to approve?
I'll give you the motion for the MOU.
I'll second the IOU.
The motion is second. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Personnel, Mrs. Winzak.
Thank you. Under new hires, for certified, we have Arian Evans, NLCC Health Science Instructor, and Tony Seidel, NLCC Criminal Justice Instructor, and also Stacy Sparks. She was temporary for us last year, but is going to be our BNL Special Needs Instructor. I bring those to you for your approval.
Get a motion to approve? Motion. Dr. Curtis makes a motion in a second.
Second.
Mr. Gilbert seconds the motion. Questions on the motion?
Is our health science and RN?
Yes.
I don't believe she's mine.
Oh,
She has 22 years of experience setting. I believe it's an associate's on it.
She's an RN. She's not a Bachelor of Science
Right.
RN. She's an associate's
Just
degree
long as
RN.
RN, so
Yes,
she can sign off on
she's an RN, not a Bachelor of Science RN.
Right.
And I refer to Dr. Gertis to explain the difference between the two, but she is an RN.
Any other questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Thank you.
Transfers, support staff Tammy Baker will be transferring from BNL Bookstore to attendance aide at BNL. I'll bring that to you for your approval.
Get a motion to approve? Mr. Garrison makes a motion in a second.
Second.
Dr. Gertis seconds the motion. Questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Thank you.
Thank you. And under extracurricular at BNL, Brian Hawkins, English Department Chairperson. I bring that to you for your approval.
Motion to approve.
Make the motion.
Mr. Gilbert makes the motion in a second.
Second.
Dr. Gertis seconds the motion. Questions on the motion?
How's that extracurricular?
He receives an ECA.
That's all it is,
for
then?
that. Yes.
Just don't perceive like being the
I know.
chairperson, being like extracurricular.
I understand.
Any other questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same. Thank you.
Thank you. And informational items under certified, we have several resignations. Leland Ames, Joint Services Resource Instructor resigning. Erica Cuellar resigning as Resource Instructor. Alexis Harmon resigning as our NLCS Career Pathway Coordinator. Mark House resigning as a Joint Service Behavior Consultant. Lori Sims resigning as Joint Service Assistant Director of Special Education. And under support, Santa Brown is resigning as joint service instructional aide, James Cooper resigning as NLCS custodian, Mandy Jones resigning as BNL instructional assistant, and Amanda Rollins resigning as NLCS nurse. Those are information items. Any questions or about any of those? And then also, just an update about our support staff handbook. We continue to work on that, just final updates. And then we are going to set meetings for each of the support groups to share that information and make sure that they have a good understanding of the changes and things in that. And then we'll bring that back to you at our next meeting. Questions on that? Thank you.
Thank you. Item H, Dr. Mumble.
I have for you, provided you the NLCS reopening plan. The last 3 weeks, we've been meeting with a committee, a group of individuals. Obviously, we've spent a lot of time looking at other plans, visiting with our school personnel and our departments. It is a fluid plan. I think we wanted to spend a little bit of extra time. If one, it is a plan that will reflect if we have low spread of the COVID virus in our area to medium to moderate to if it elevated to substantial. That is something that we will maintain on our website. Obviously, we'll continue to get that information. I know both myself get regular, sometimes daily updates from our county health department, along with some from the state health department. We have listed several links that you will find on the website for parents, for our employees, and resources that are available. I think we tried to make the document a very good resource to parents and employees. And then also we've listed some of the guidelines down below as far as if a student or an employee or someone like that would be around someone or would have tested positive. I think all of those areas will continue to monitor. You know, I think the more we learn, and I think a lot of the information we receive, it changes. Most importantly, we are scheduled to start back to school on time, just like I think every other school district I know at this time. We are encouraging, and I think know that the social distancing is just something that isn't going to be possible on our school buses. So I think wearing the mask on the school buses, and we know that our drivers on the buses will have those masks. And we also know that at some of our schools, as we lay out those guidelines as far as the passing periods, and we're looking at things like traffic flow in the school and certain staircases going up and certain staircases going down. We're blessed at some of our larger schools. Bedford Middle School, for example, has 2 sets of stairs on the right and left, so it's very easy. And even at the high school, we've talked about dividing the 4 stairwells so there's common direction. Obviously, you know, we're very excited to get the students back in the building, but we know on a daily basis, and we'll continue to monitor and we'll continue to look and work at everything that we can. But I want to thank the committee that helped us and everyone. A lot of time energy was placed in trying to create a document that, to the best of our ability, dealt with a kindergartner versus a 12th grader, or was a document that was able to look at and support our high school, but then a smaller elementary school. And I think even you can see in there from lunch, you know, from our food service program, what's laid out, from transportation, what's laid out, a lot of our different departments. I think anyone, if there's parents or, board members or others that have questions or concerns, we'd love to hear from them. I think, it's impossible to think of everything in every situation. But we've tried to put enough guidelines together, and it's available on our website. I think we understand probably at some of our schools, when schools start, we'll have some guidelines for those schools, that we look at and we have those conversations. I do know, obviously one area, I think it's just where we live that, we're going to have those masks. I think, the use of our water fountains, we are looking at refilling stations and making different changes to our schools, but I don't know that we've ever reached out to our PTOs and some assistance, but, it may be that, this might be the year we need some assistance in just some water bottles or different types of masks or things like that. So we're looking at a lot of those things and we'll continue to. And we welcome that. It is on our website. We don't have a section set up now, but we could also, like we've done in the past, have a section right there where individuals could send us their comments and feedback. So we'll get that set up, which will be a nice, easy way for individuals to send that. So I just wanted to share that with you and kind of what, brings us to that. And we'll continue to work on that plan. I did submit the plan to our county health department. That was part of the, direction from the Indiana State Department of Education that we, that they have our plans and those things. So they do have it on file, and I'm sure that Mrs. Kinzer and Dr. our county health doctor, Smith, will review it and look through the plan if they see anything. So.
Do we have anything in place in case we do get another, state mandated closure? Like an online, I know we got online school, which is separate, but like, are we working on a plan for?
Yeah, and that is something that we're working with teachers and having 5-Star is great. They have they just rolled out a class for teachers, kind of self-paced, to kind of look at that pedagogy of online. But we also want to look at consistency across grade levels, and so we're working and have been working this summer with the new adoption to align so that we could provide first grade teachers the bones of the lesson, and then they can personalize it so that everybody's not recreating something, and then they can make it unique for their class, but we're going to give the bones and the things that are similar across our curriculum, and continue just to support in that way. And I think that will be a big piece. And talking with other curriculum directors and things, and principals across the state and ours is, it's kind of that mindset of thinking like when we come back, preparing like you're teaching online, but you're really in person, so that practicing with our first graders and, this is what it's going to look like at home. So you can click on this site and practicing that when we are together. So when they go home, it's not foreign to them. And that again is something with the at-home learning, like Mr. Schlegel mentioned, we weren't prepared for that. That was over a weekend, but now we've had time to prepare. And so we can share with students the practice when we're in the classroom, so that if that does have to happen, I know this, I know where we go. And we've also talked about other resources for parents, a forward-facing site that what is expected for your student, and then the back site where students access it. So yeah, we're preparing for a more robust online should that have to happen. Yes, and Chromebooks would then go home with all students. We will be one-to-one. The plan is not to send them home every night with the younger students, but if we would have to close for an extended period, then they would take them home.
Okay, next up, just wanted to touch base. And we have PowerPoint here. We're going to go through the PowerPoint fairly quickly. I know I've made it available to each of you to kind of look at and with the numbers, but obviously the benefits, and first let me say Mr. Callahan unfortunately is out of town with family, not here, but I know that him, the assistant athletic directors, band, P, they've put this presentation together. But obviously, the increased field usage is number one. And a lot of the items that were shared earlier tonight are there. And I think the one that maybe wasn't, most of our IHSAA sectional, regional, state tournaments are played on synthetic turf fields, and it will just be the art, whether it's a band competition or football or whatever it is. So. Here's one example, and I think this came, and we've projected this ourselves, but that really lays out how much our field gets used right now. And go ahead and go to the next slides, Andrea, because we got 3 slides that kind of represents this. But basically, there you can see this last year, we used our football field for about 68 hours. And go ahead. We'll click. Here's Center Groves, and coincidentally, we got their information. This goes back to before 2003. But this was how much they had used their field. And it just happened that the number was identical to ours of 68 hours. You can see from 2003 to 2013, you know, they was looking at the different numbers and the hours and different things. Obviously, they're on their second turf field at Center Grove, but back in 2003, and you can just see how many hours the field gets used, not only by band, the PE classes, football, and the other one that is starting to use the fields and the projected field at BNL would be used for soccer as well, which is boys and girls soccer in the fall, which would also increase the usage, which they didn't have at that time. Their soccer field was using grass, so, which we would still maintain that. If you look at, there's kind of the estimated, and this is all Center Grove's expenses, but they were just looking at some of those things. So you can see it's a minimal expense broken out compared to trying to maintain the irrigation, fertilizer, chemicals, and constantly painting the field every week after you mow it. This was an interesting slide that Center Grove shared, that, you know, the cost per hour use, which really surprised me. With the turf, it's down to 15 cents an hour, which their cost per hour was $411 an hour. So, I mean, when they divided up the expenses. I think the physical education classes, like was touched on earlier, you know, it just hasn't been an opportunity for our physical education classes to go outdoors more. You know, a lot of times morning classes, we know that there's a due on longer and different things. But most importantly, sometimes the football coach or this or that, or the sprinkler system, you know, we were always in this, oh, we got to go out there and paint the field now, or, well, we're going to mow it today, or no, we fertilized it, so we need to stay off for 3 days. So you can see the list there that the opportunities for everybody to use the field. I think the one, just as we click, no need to, well, you can go back. The Boys and Girls Club, you know, we maintain the Parkview field right now in town for the Boys and Girls Club. I think it used to be called Pop Warner. I don't know exactly what it's called now. But it's a great opportunity, and I think, you know, they could play out there, and I think it really does build some excitement. but yet even all the way down to the Pop Warner program of maintaining the Parkview field that we have to do and paint and even have those types of things there where we could do that out at B&L.
Would we close Parkview Field?
You know, we would still have it. I think a lot of those expenses of maintaining it and the chains and painting it and, you know, I've asked, we're trying to look, I don't know exactly the amount of money we spend on paint every year. We think it's about in that $8,000 to $10,000 range. So the good thing is we would probably have it some for practices, you know, obviously for the junior high to practice on. And I don't know, you know, it may be some that, I mean, I'm not speaking for the coaches and I don't know, we're not that far, but we practice as one team. But if we have two fields out of high school, they might practice some out there. I don't know. You know, they come together as one team, but we definitely still keep it, maintain it. But I think a lot of those additional expenses of maintaining it as an active football field, we wouldn't have to.
And I know that the bleachers out there are getting to be some really sketchy things. You know, there's some of the seats I don't think I want to sit on.
Well, and obviously you start maintaining one field, there's lots of things that go with it, with effective concession stands and refrigeration and, you know, even in the concession stands, things we don't think about. That where when you start doing it twice, it adds up. So go ahead. There's some marching things, obviously as shared earlier, all of your competitions now, you know, we're hearing that it's almost the #1 thing. But I think just to give our students and our athletes, and truly, if you go watch the band practice, and as I know many in the room know, you know, there are student athletes too, and learning to play the instrument, going through those steps and everything and watching their practices. But just to give them that opportunity as far as, you know, a safe place and something that's not hard and well lit. And I think in some ways too, having access to that PA system and probably a better PA system where they can communicate what needs to be done. I've heard them holding their PA speaker out on the practice one. And they do a good job, but a lot of times having a lot of the other things, it's nice to have.
What would we do with the big tower that I'm waiting for somebody to fall off of?
Soon.
Well,
Would that be?
I don't know. We'll
Does that
figure
set
it
up on
out.
the
Well,
practice
I
now?
think a lot of times it's not that every practice is going to be on the football field, you know. So, you know, we'll probably keep the tire there and we'll just make sure that it's got good safety ropes around it.
Not as dangerous as the previous one though, is it?
I think you can see down there, I think the big thing jumps at me on this slide is all the schools that have turf. Many of the schools are getting around their second year of turf. I know Center Grove has center, it's not highlighted, but they're on their second, and if they started with 2003. Most of the fields, as they, you know, initially it was that 8 to 10 mark. Now it's kind of 10 to 12, but they're getting really close with the type of material that they're putting underneath and everything. And if you maintain that, you know, we're getting 12, 13, 14 years on. But it just does give you an idea of the fields. And when I say that, we didn't do a breakdown exactly, but I know many of the schools also, as far as the infield, is a big thing on baseball and softball, that many of the schools, in fact, I think almost all in our conference, as far as Jennings County, Jeffersonville's others that are doing the infields of the baseball and softball, just because that's where so much of your maintenance is. And that's what limits your usage of it so much. And so anyway, think there's just some differences between the both as far as, obviously the appearance. I happened to be out at the high school. A senior was out there. They had a photographer with them. They were taking some senior pictures. And they happened to ask me, is there any way I could go out and do anything? Because the football field, there's no emblems on it and there's nothing on it. And the photographer had been to Seymour and had taken pictures, and obviously they did some. And of course, their emblem is down all the time. And it was a nice photo background drop. And I explained as we were standing up next to the gym, ours is not a turf field. There is no emblem on it, and we only have lines on it when we paint lines. But anyway, it was the appearance. Obviously, it is nice to always have something, whether it's mowed or taken care of, and no dandelions. Safety is a big concern, and I think the more they do with our athletes, I think in the beginning it was a little bit borderline, but I know they do the compaction test. And I assume the football coaches would all agree, but I think from a safety standpoint, even with the studies and everything that they've done, it's just more and more safe than it ever used to be, as far as ACLs and everything from that standpoint, and even just being tackled. I'm sure in a couple of weeks after we get 7 or 8 days of no rain, the field's going to be a lot harder than what a synthetic turf field was. So obviously, we're hoping for better performance, and most importantly, a lot of times accidents, sprinkler systems, there's not much of a warranty on a regular field, a natural grass field, and we have more of a warranty with the synthetic field. Baseball, you can read through those, but obviously there's lots of things as far as that infield and the wear and tear there. For the baseball and softball, just lots of extra uses, and to play game after game after game all day long, or to host a tournament, or like Mr. Gilbert shared, we're fortunate that we host the semi-state of the softball. But that we just, it would be much more pleasant if we were able to, and much more relaxing, I'm sure, when you're not worrying about weather and if the field, how it looks and how it's maintained. So expenses, obviously, there's lots of it, there's those expenses that we look at, the pitching area and around the batter's box, but they've come with new, inlays where after so many uses, you can take that out and just replace that area. That was always a little bit of a downfall in the beginning. So the advantage is we're kind of getting in that it helps the longevity of those fields because they can replace those high use areas. Go ahead. It's pretty close to the same. You can go ahead and click through the safety. You can click through that. But obviously right there's one that it talks about just the injuries and that some of the universities and high schools have done. Your muscle tear.
Does this information come from like the ISHAA or somebody like that?
This one was from, it was a 3-year study. This was, I don't know where it was. It's listed up there. I really don't know. Yeah. But I think overall those are, we know that our fields will get used at least 10 times more in almost any type of weather. we'll be able to generate revenue, which really is just not a possibility now with different tournaments and different activities. The band program, I know there's lots of drum and bugle corps that sometimes will come and visit and use the facility for a few days. I'm assuming in the past when North Lawrence had hosted band competitions, as far as gates and concessions, was revenue that could go directly to the band, for their hard work, and those little things add up, and that $8,000 to $10,000 or $6,000 can go a long way. So those are ways that revenue can actually be generated for some of our teams. Obviously, it's not all additional cost, because there is maintenance cost savings on this, and those are savings that's going to happen every year. The one we touched on, which was really interesting, and they told me, do you have any idea, Dr. Mungle, how dirty our high school gets after the football team plays on it and it's rained outside? Do you have any idea? And I sat there and no. The next time it rains, and if you're at that game, I want you to come in and see the locker rooms. I want you to see the training room. I want you to see the hallways. And if you're not there, I'm going to send you pictures. And she says, you be sure and tell the board how many hours it takes us to clean up the inside of school. I don't care how much it tears up the football field, but how much the football field is inside our school afterwards. And I really hadn't thought about that. But I know with the locker rooms being inside and everything, and I told her, I said, I will be sure and share that information. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. And I think most importantly, it does keep us up with the other conference schools. And I think as we look, and students and all of us can make those decisions. But with this investment, I think if you go into the next, okay. I think what we're looking at with these funds, though, that especially the funds that we spend at the high school, and we're not just looking at the turf on the football field to help just the football team. I mean, our boys and girls soccer teams will have that opportunity. Or even if they need to practice and it's too muddy to practice on their traditional field. I think the band's opportunities on that. And we do want to resurface the track and make sure that we can do what we need to with the track. We're looking at the wrestling area. I think to take that area behind the bleachers and build some permanent walls and at least have that enclosed up there where they have an area, and, during basketball games and, after school, not everybody's running through there. So we're trying to look, even with baseball and softball, we did some work. Currently, our swimming pool is drained. I think it's been 6-7 years, but it is getting all new epoxy paint. We're recoating it. It looks great. We've had it drained for a long time. But since school was closed, in part just to save money, but we're really trying to hit that. And when you think about that, the number of students it's going to impact, if we spend the $2.6 million out there on our facilities, it's almost all of our 7 through 12 students that will be going out there and using it, and as the others come up. So I think that's something, we need to be cognizant of. So these are the elementary projects that we're looking at. Obviously the HVAC system at Shawswick Elementary, and we'll be contacting the architect and we'll be putting that out to bid. The roof at Stalker Elementary, and then we'll be looking at the HVAC kind of analysis on the other elementary schools, just to kind of get a better understanding. And as we come in, 2 areas a little bit, and I think it's somewhat security related, but obviously traffic flow at Olytic and Parkview are areas that we want to look at. I think some of the area where traditionally maybe it was used a little bit more on a regular basis when Olynyk had football. But I think looking at those fields, and I think we want to make an effort to make that area more attractive and maintained. And if it does mean taking down some of the old scoreboards that are no longer in use, or the old field goal post, or those things, and maybe exploring that opportunity of coming in and having a nice drop-off area. And obviously, we'd probably be looking at stairs, but at least maybe where we can make them covered and, you know, a way to get into our schools. I think also at Parkview, we have looked, and I think the ability to go around the back of the Parkview Intermediate building, and we've seen the number of cars, and it has been in the drawing, Mr. Ritter, I think 6-7 years ago, as they've looked at different things. So we want to look at the traffic flow at Olynyk and Parkview. We're obviously looking at staggered start times and drop off and pickup times for parents and buses. I think one, that will help a little bit limiting the number of people, even with the COVID and everything, but yet also to help with the traffic flow. And lastly, and importance everywhere, is just what we can look at with safety and security. And we're going to look at that at the elementary project. So that's what we're looking at for the other half of the money that we're funding. So just wanted to give you an update. I mean, we don't need any vote or anything. Obviously, I've given you everything to look at. I think going through the process, you know, to know, we did reach out to other schools. If you have questions or concerns, you know, feel free to reach out to us. Next up, we have our prom and graduation updates. For prom, obviously we were thrown, I guess, I don't know if thrown or a little bit unexpected yesterday when we received notice that we didn't go all the way to level 5, that they came up with a 4.5. I think for prom, and I have contacted the county health department, which with the state health department, and they have communicated to me to have any event over 250 is just not an option. As much as we want to and we would like to, we just don't know how we can do that, especially with the prom. I'm not opposed, and I don't want to stand right here right now and make a decision that maybe we couldn't do, you know, explore the ideal of doing something later. I think prom is an opportunity that it just, you know, it involves our students and maybe not as much the community or parents and grandparents. So the opportunity that we could look at having something later is a possibility. We do have the facilities and those things. As far as graduation, I'd like to spend a little time with the high school, and I think learn a little bit more, and then communicate on Monday some information out if there is a possibility. I think most importantly, we want to explore all of our possibilities before we just say no. And I think to look and see if there is something we could do in the form of a graduation, but maybe not our traditional graduation exactly like we had planned. And we just need a little bit of time. And I think maybe with that, even, you know, sometimes it involves talking to sound system, and it's, you know, what could be done virtually or different screens or things. And we have through this process, and I know we will reach out with the seniors. We've met with them on numerous times, and they're understanding and they know what our goal is. So we'll continue to meet. And I think the goal would be that we would share information out Monday afternoon, kind of what the options would be for graduation. Does that sound good, or any questions? Or
Yeah, we just, I think all the board members, we wanna do everything that we can possibly do. And we were pushing, I think what feedback we got from the senior class officers, that they wanted to do everything they could do to have a traditional graduation. I think we were working towards that if we would have went to level 5 somewhat. But this curveball yesterday has kind of set us back some. So we've discussed several things and we're all on the same page with doing all that we can do to have some sort of graduation ceremony for our seniors. Even if it involves some hectic planning, it may not be a well-oiled machine, but we do want to do everything we can do to accommodate that.
Last up, I just share with you our board policy, Neola. It's just there for a first reading. Don't need any action. If you'd like a hard copy or a digital copy was provided to you. But if you need any more, that's just typically what we do. And we'll have first reading, and then our next board meeting on the 16th, we'll get that approved.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Item I, persons to address the board. Seeing none, closing business, upcoming meetings, there'll be an executive session, 5:15 PM, and NLCS School Board open session, 6:30 PM on Thursday, July 16th, 2020 at the NLCS Administration Building. And the next item is adjournment. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Arnold makes a motion and a second. Dr. Jurgis seconds the motion. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same. Thank you all for being here.